Good morning and happy Lurzday Thursday to you all. So, another Thursday is here. This will be a very brief episode of Lurzday Thursday this week because my Thursday and my job that actually pays me is relatively busy. So, lots of meetings scheduled for today, a lot of work to do. Hence, I cannot spend 45 to 60 minutes on my regularly scheduled podcast this week. I know. It's a terrible thing to actually have to work for a living because this is more fun than work. And it's a pleasure to be with you all, and it's a pleasure to have these episodes to talk about all the things that I care about and things that I find interesting during the week. However, it can't always come to pass. So, a very brief episode this week. I got my forest scarf and my Letterman jacket because I am freezing in my frigid basement. Like most of the United States this week, it's cold. And in my basement, it's extra cold. I don't want the space heater on during this brief podcast episode because it makes a lot of noise. So it's going to be a forest Thursday today, in addition to a Lurzday Thursday, because we don't have a chance for a full podcast episode. But we can talk a little Nottingham Forest since they play their final game in the Europa League league play. Match day 8 of 8 for league play in their Europa League. Forest will be playing in approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes. So, I wanted to talk briefly about Nottingham Forest and give a few shout outs to those who interacted with the podcast last week, starting with Tyrese Travels. Indeed, the royal we is a famous line from what is that movie? The Big Lebowski. There it is. As Tyrese Travels pointed out, the royal we comes from the Big Lebowski, in addition to all of its historical roots. So there's that. And Tyrese Travels is a common engagement figure on my relatively new podcast. So thank you, Tyrese Travels, for giving some engagement and watching my podcast. So in this salutations segment, shout outs and salutations go to Tyrese Travels. So there's that. Let's talk about Nottingham Forest. So they had a rough beginning to last week. This time last week, I noted that we will see how they did against Braga away, and they put out a very stale performance and lost 1-0. They squandered a chance at a penalty. Morgan Gibbs-White put forward a rather weak penalty shot, which was saved by the goalie, and then they bungled a comedy of errors, a Braga attack at the other end, which ended with a Ryan Yates own goal. And despite lots of good chances, hitting the post a few times, the crossbar a few times, and having some very good shots on opportunities on goal later in the game, they lost 1-0, which pretty much eliminated any chance that Forest had of finishing in the top 8. The top 8 finishers in the Europa League league play go directly to the round of 16 without having to advance on a home and away playoff. Sadly, Forest now will have to play 2 more games to get into the top 16, that final 16, the knockout round. They'll have to win their home and home against another opponent in the knockout playoff round. Not only that, but they will likely have to play an elite team like Aston Villa or Lyon or potentially Roma. The potential opponents for Forest, if they get through the knockout playoffs and get into the round of 16, the knockout rounds, it's going to be a tough game, most likely. So it's very important that they win today, because a win today with good goal differential will help Forest potentially draw a less intense potential opponent in the knockout round. So when they get to if they get through whoever they play in the home and home, they'll play not as strong of an opponent in the knockout round. So for seeding purposes, it's important for them to do well today at home in match day 8 of 8. I'm anticipating and I was pretty right with the defensive struggle in a low-scoring game last week. I'm anticipating that they'll be able to build a little bit on the win against Brentford. So they, despite losing to Braga away, it's a very bad performance in Europe last week, they rebounded and came out strong against the Bees of Brentford and beat them 2-0 away, including a goal from Taiwo, a striker of Nottingham Forest lore, who helped them stay up in 22 and 23 and 23, 24. Important player for Forest, who helped them with a lot of goals in the relegation fights they've had in previous years. Then sort of faded off because Chris Wood came in. Chris Wood had a renaissance last year and scored 20-plus goals for Forest. Was a dominant figure as the striker. So, and Taiwo had struggled with injuries. He's always had some issues with his hamstrings, and then had a very severe injury late last year that resulted in having to have emergency surgery on his intestines. Very severe injury. So it's to see him come back and get his first goal in over a year was a beautiful thing. It was really nice to see, because you want to see Taiwo, Big T, getting back in the goal column. And his goal was not an easy goal either. I mean, Morgan Gibbs-White got the credit for the assist, but it was a very probing assist. He just shot the ball upfield on the wing and hoped that Taiwo would get to it. And he did, and then he bullied 2 people. And then had a difficult shot on goal, but managed to beat the keeper too. So great individual effort. Looked like 2022, 2023 Taiwo. So hopefully he'll come back into form. So I'm anticipating today. I mean, he's not going to play in Europe because he's not on the roster for the league phase of the Europa League. So Taiwo won't be there. I'm anticipating a pretty concerted effort from Forest to put a lot of goals in and do the best they can to win and win handily. But I also think they'll have some defensive lapses because they won't play. They got another big game against Crystal Palace this week in the Premier League in an effort to stay up. So I think that they're going to have some defensive lapses. Murado is not as good as Murillo, and he's a center back who will play, who's their first center back off the bench. I think he'll play today. And I don't think that they're going to keep a clean sheet, but I do think that they will win. I'm anticipating something like 3-2 or 4-2, maybe 3-1. But I would bet the over on it. I think that they're going to have more. I think there's going to be more than 2.5 goals scored in that game. And I think that it's going to be kind of sloppy, but I think that Force's talent will shine through. Some of those guys, like that's why I said last week, I'm not one to want to ship everybody away. Cali Mwendo hadn't had a great start, but he obviously he needed some depth at striker, and he's doing well at Frankfurt. So to instantly say all these guys that they brought in need to be sold and loaned and tossed out immediately, they should have some patience. I mean, McAtee looked pretty good last week. He got the penalty conceded on him, forced that penalty in the box last week against Braga. MGW missed it, but having some patience with some of those younger guys. Back was another one. These are talented players. Give them some time to fit in, to develop, and you can't just toss them away like Pokemon cards. Because look what would have happened with one of our best defensive midfielders, Ibrahim Sangari. Everyone wanted to run out of town for 2 years today. He's one of our best players. And the reason why Douglas Luiz, another defensive midfielder, could not force his way through in the Forest lineup because Anderson and Sangari are so good. They had to loan him. They had to break he was forced out, essentially. Juventus in Italy recalled him from their loan and loaned him right back to Aston Villa, which is a very good team. If he could get in the lineup at Aston Villa, he should be able to get in the lineup at Forest. He just had some injury issues, never had the chance to really crack that lineup with the good defensive midfielders we have. But I have a feeling we're going to miss him, because when you look at the lineups or the potential defensive midfielders after Sangari and Anderson, we need the depth, and Villa picked him up because Villa needs the depth too after the injuries they've had in the midfield. But if he could play for Villa, he should be able to play for Forest, and it's just a shame that he hasn't been able to crack that lineup. So, in terms of what I'm expecting this week for Forest, I'm expecting a sloppy win today. And I'm expecting them to beat Palace, because Palace has been reeling. The head coach has announced he's not coming back next year. He's going to run out his contract. They're potentially going to sell one of their top striker to Forest. And there's a lot of bad blood with Palace because of Palace's failure to file their paperwork on time. Forest got their Europa League spot, and now they might get their top striker. So it's a weird thing going on with that, but Palace is not in a great place, and I have a feeling Forest will beat. I'm more confident about Forest beating Palace than I am about this potential game here, just because we'll have our solid defensive output against Palace, but I'm not sure how it's going to be against our opponents this week. And I can't even pronounce the name. They're from Hungary. Starts with an F. I can't even pronounce it. My grandfather's Hungarian. He would be ashamed of me that I cannot pronounce the name of our opponents this week. Sorry, Grandpa. But that's what we got this week. We got a game, final Europa League game, trying to maximize our position for the Knockout League playoffs. So hopefully we'll get a lesser opponent than one of these big dogs. So we don't want to go up against one of these Portuguese teams, or Villa, or Lyon in the upcoming round of 16, if we get there. So, good luck to Forest this week. Sorry for Douglas Luiz. It's a shame. He's a very good talent. I don't think they want to pay his transfer fee because they're obligated to buy if he had played a certain number of Premier League games. I don't think they wanted to pay it, so they let him go. So now he's at Villa, a rival. And I don't like losing him because Ryan Yates is okay. He's not as good as Douglas Luiz. Dominguez is good, but you need more midfielders who can play that defensive role, because we saw what happened when they tried to put McAtee back there. He just got annihilated. Bullied. Did not look good against Wrexham. So They tried to try him out in that role. He's not a very good defensive midfielder. He's much more comfortable attacking. He's little. Looks like a middle schooler. So, yeah, that's where we're at. And this already went longer than I expected it to go, and I got to get to my real job. So, 15 minutes. Go Forest. Hopefully they pull through and win today and win against Palace on Sunday. And we'll have a fuller and more extensive Lurzday Thursday podcast next Thursday. So farewell, and may all your Thursdays be Lurzday Thursdays. Lurz out.